And one of the things we talked about is at the time, the importance of building your personal brand and how that helps kind of the company and build awareness and things like that. Do you still think that's the case, or has that kind of died down as you've built up the company brand?
Yeah, I think branding is not our issue now because we were part of so many different startup programs, speaking platforms, and those initial years were part of the branding exercise as well to
Yeah.
see, how can Perks extend ourselves outside of Singapore. And no longer do people resonate with, oh, I used to use your app. Now it's
Yeah.
a little different conversation, but we still get it from here and there. Oh yeah, I used your app 6 years ago. And we even get it in the Philippines where some of these, tech or digital leaders said, I used to live in Singapore. I used your app a long time ago. So, it resonates with people, that brand. And we kept the brand for a reason. It had a ring to it. It's easy to remember. And then
Mm,
how do you say it? We enterprise our brand. So
mm.
we made it even more sophisticated because now we're selling to different audiences, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that what has been the big key learning from that? Like you said, just helping them shift to digital natives. What have been some of the key learnings in that process? Because I know it's not easy.
I think with COVID also, it's accelerated a lot of these buying cycles, purchasing behaviors, transformational strategy, how they want to execute. Everything's changed, and so in a way, it's in our favor because now everything's pent up
Yeah.
for a massive launch. I think with fintech, with mobile first, and with a lot of the super apps in the market, it's created this ecosystem that's gotten so gray. The
Mm,
competitive landscape has gotten so gray,
mm,
and everyone now is becoming some type of fintech player.
yeah.
You could be a retailer and you're going into fintech. You could be a gaming company going into fintech, and so everyone needs a wallet, and everyone needs some type of financial services angle.
Mm,
Because if you have millions and millions of a sustainable, loyal base of customers already, that is yet to be monetized. Can you imagine every transaction that goes through with millions of these customers, how much revenue you could actually obtain? But there hasn't been a way to actually put that into a lifestyle-oriented marketplace, including the fintech as the underbelly, or underpinning that whole business models. But the super app started it early, right? And then you
mm,
can see, with the China investments and financial Tencent coming in, it has blown everything out of proportion, and they're accelerating this, with their engine, with the resources. And now Asia is becoming this de facto standard mobile first super app marketplace. And insurance companies want to create insurance health marts or health marketplaces. You have, banking wants to incorporate full on lifestyle and content into their core banking services. Telcos are now building super apps and fintech as well as marketplaces. So everyone is building a super app. And the competition is now colliding, and there's going to be a lot of, I would say, M&A in the future to
mm.
see, and then with all the tech giants coming into Asia, rather than competing, they are actually now partnering and investing in Asian super apps and telcos. You see Facebook putting their investment into Gojek, and then you
Mm.
see Facebook also investing in Reliance Jio. Amazon wants a piece of that pie in India. So telcos is the first urgent transformation, and I see that moving more and more to Asia.
No, I think it's a very good point, and I see the same thing that like you said, everyone wants to be a fintech player, everyone wants to create a super app. I think the inherent risk with that is, I think, because everyone's starting doing it, they think that it's something you have to do, um, versus something that is actually good for the business or good for the customer. So I see a lot of organizations, I'll probably get flack for this, creating these super apps, but they're just doing it for the sake of doing it because they see that other players in the market are doing that, and so once again, does it really have an impact on the business of the customers? It's big question mark. But that's something I've
Right.
seen.
I think if you're a digital native and you're trying to start from scratch now, it's too expensive of an exercise to do that, especially during this time. But if you had a 3-4 year advantage and head start, you're in the right trajectory. And then the traditional enterprises, they already have millions of highly sticky customer base. Now you're not going to switch banks overnight. You're not going to switch mobile carriers. You're going to stick with them for the long haul, and if you move around, it's the same customer base. So you're not really moving much market share. Actually, it's in the user's favor because all of these brands are funding our lifestyle. At the end of the day, the consumer wins. And so with this evolution of digitalization, the consumers will get even more benefits out of this.
Let's hope that's the case. So you mentioned something quite interesting in terms of the stickiness, and this is something I want to get your thoughts on in terms of loyalty. Obviously, insurance, banking, like you said, you're not going to switch. But what about those industries like retail, where there's been a lot of press, a lot of research on loyalty, particularly among millennials and younger generation, becoming less and less. How does that kind of impact those less sticky organizations when it comes to loyalty?
Well, we are talking to some really cool organizations like tech companies that have a different way of operating and envisioning their connection with their customers. If you have a predominant base of, let's say, young users, Gen Z, Gen Y, really, really young, 30 and under, you have to think about purpose-driven CSR approach to branding, to connecting with them. And they're not really thinking like the baby boomers or, the older generation. So they have a different way. Is it purposeful? They look at money differently as well. They look at environments differently. So I think as a brand, depends on the personas that you actually go after. Even this COVID exercise has actually accelerated a lot of the baby boomers to use mobile in a different way and force them to do it because there's no other way to do it than to go to your mobile, right? I mean, they're not in drones or you're getting 100% addressable market of these baby boomers, but at least, there's a certain percentage of them actually now are sticking to mobile first. So we see loyalty is really dead. I mean, if you think about what Grab's doing, creating this Gmart or Grab Mart, and then you have other companies that are creating marketplaces. Everyone is just trying to become that marketplace for consumers and making it easier. But the SMEs will actually change, and that market and that segment will also accelerate pretty quickly. So I think I see the whole ecosystem evolving, and those who actually adopt it and actually embrace it and also power that ecosystem, we're like one of those players. It's in our favor, actually.
Yeah, I guess what you were saying is like it has to evolve, because if you look at traditional loyalty, a lot of times it's like sending like these email blasts and stuff like that. It's like get 10% off, and that's what they think like loyalty is. And there's a lot of organizations very large that still do that, and I think that's what's going to keep the customers going. But to your point, you said for the younger generation, they're looking for something a little bit beyond that. Looking at a purpose-driven approach to how the brand speaks, but only operates. I think now is an excellent time, and this might be a bit controversial time for a lot of different reasons globally, but this is something I would love to get your thoughts on as well, because I've seen, a lot of organizations kind of jump on bandwagons when it comes to purpose-driven stuff. So you see like, obviously Black Lives Matters and then Gay Pride, and you see them switching their logos almost overnight, depending on, which cause overlaps with that date. So what are your thoughts on organizations who, may not have a clear idea in terms of their purpose?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. We've seen so many companies evolved, and I think COVID has changed how we operate. I see like 6 months ago how we interacted with some of these senior leaderships, and now it's completely different because they have to think about not just driving top line, no longer that even our conversation is not really about top line per se, right? It's really driving operational efficiency and just fast tracking some of their digitalization projects. And this whole loyalty thing, because this is what we know, this is what the generation knows. It's, let's fix loyalty. Screw loyalty. Seriously, stop trying to, come up with a loyalty program. What everyone needs is an essential services or what is actually more meaningful for their lifestyle. So that's why understanding and learning your customers' behavior, transactional or non-transactional, is key. Because now that with COVID, and this will extend for the next 12 to 18 months at the minimum, our needs and wants are just literally essentials. I'm not going to think about getting the best lipstick or some, that's like the last thing on my mind. It's like on the 1,000 list, right?
Yeah.
The top 5 is really the essentials, grocery
Mm-hmm.
and all the things that we need on a daily basis. Coffee.
Yeah.
And so I think to think about consumers, we have to think about, that's why retail and the luxury and advertising, the spend drops significantly.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the most hurt. Hospitality, obviously.
Yeah.
Funny enough, a few years back, when we started this business pivot, I said we should not go after aviation. We should not go after hospitality, and very little retail. And we went for the essentials. And the essentials are things that consumers cannot live without: banking, insurance, mobile services, and grocery, right? So these 4 essentials are the only ones that we started focusing on first because there's high stickiness already.
I love that. And I think it applies to whether you're trying to invest in companies or you're trying to invest in kind of partners or clients. You're absolutely right. It's something I've been thinking about as well, is those companies that aren't affected by recessions, not to say they're recession proof, because every company I think will be impacted in some respect, but there are some where they're extremely volatile, which you pointed out a couple in terms of like, aviation, luxury, where, the economy is going great, then yes, they're going to go up. But as soon as it dips like it is now, they're feeling the pain. So I think that's an excellent point in terms of understanding how volatile your customer market is. And I love that you've thought about that. I've thought about that reactively, but you've already thought about that proactively in terms of where you want to focus. So I think it's incredibly smart.
Yeah, maybe it's having failed so many startups prior, and great businesses, whether it's you're going through a recession or the economy is growing. Great business will sustain itself because you're serving a business model that is highly effective.
And it's one of those things where, once again, you focus on the essential markets. You also focus on enterprises, which I do as well, also the essential ones. But I think that also helps. It's unfortunate that a lot of SMEs are feeling the most pain during this time. I think a lot of the larger ones will have enough capital that'll carry them through these times. But I think the SMEs will really, really, feel the pain right about now. So it makes sense that you're kind of taking those boxes in terms of those who can survive and those who have enough capital and investment to invest in things like this to carry them through this time.
Right. I remember during the dot-com bust era, and this is actually so different, right? The feeling of that, but it's essentially a recession, and we saw every day there was some startup, folding, like multiple startups folding every day. And it was always headline, how many startups are laying off people, how many and the startups, if we're private sector funded, it's private equity, and we're not going to get the government grants, very seldom. And then if you get the government grants, you have to, qualify XYZ, all these different criteria. So essentially 80% or more of the startups won't qualify. And there's no point in trying to chase after these government grants. That's why we thought through a lot of this. If we're not sustainable on our own, with or without any help, and if the investors don't believe in us, then it's a fail model. Then we have to go back to the drawing board and call it a day. But I think for our startups, I haven't seen too many of these, these noises and headliners. And I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a company called F Company. I can't say it right. It was called fcompany.com. And every time you log into, I tell you, the traffic going in there every day to see who's been F'd. And then you see a lineup of startups, but there isn't, now you go to Tech in Asia and a few others that, share with you these types of scenarios. But back then was a very different experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that some of the companies have learned, I think, from the recent recessions and have started to build up a bit of more of a runway. So they've
Yeah.
survived this, but yeah, it's one of those things that everyone's affected. Another thing I want to get your thoughts on is we talk about the ups and downs, and obviously you've been able to pivot on top of that. And I don't recognize this because I interview a lot of female leaders, but you are a female leader in Asia. Has that had kind of an impact in terms of how you operate or how people have perceived working with you as a female entrepreneur?
No, I'm pretty abrasive. I'm assertive. I'm, I don't find myself in a certain gender. Like I just base everything on outcomes and merit. But because I was born female, I fit into that bias. And so you operate that way just by a de facto standard, what society views you. But I just go after a certain goal. You have a major purpose and a certain company objective to achieve. And whether female or male, you just have to, but how I see things and feel things and how I lead may be, different than the male. And that's going to be inherently our DNA doing the thing. So I see myself more or less achieving certain trajectory based on what I can apply from my learnings, male or female. I've learned most of my actually leadership skills from men. So
Really?
yeah, because there's no females in tech back then. Who are the role models? You start out your career in '97 in the Valley, and there is no females in tech.
Yeah.
So then you literally look up to the IBMers and the Intel leaders and all these executives, and they're like one of the best trained senior leaders, and then you learn so much from them. I mean, if you're the type of leader that are high, your first day on the job is to fire 1,000 people. How do you do that? So
Yeah.
it's tough. So you learn from these guys who know how to scale, who know how to manage. They have this playbook back then, and some of that leadership learning, it could be so valuable today. I think people need strong, resilient leaders who are compassionate.
Mm. No, I'm with you 110%. I feel the exact same way. I think the reason I bring that up is a lot of people who are watching this, who I've interviewed, are female executives, and there's a lot of female entrepreneur clubs now. It's becoming far more prevalent. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of young female entrepreneurs who just blow away a lot of the older executives I've seen, and I think it's particularly in Asia. I don't know if because I've been in Asia for 13 years, I've seen some incredible young female talent. Like I said, I don't really pay attention to gender, but if I look at the people who have changed my mind in terms of like broadening it and things like that, it's a lot of them have been female entrepreneurs. Looking back, so I think Asia in particular, I don't know if it's the competitiveness or what it is, but you see a lot of emerging female talent coming out.
Yeah, I think more so here than the West. I experience the same. I don't know what from a tech sector, right? But from a traditional enterprise, from the leadership perspective, it's still very dominated by the men.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the board, right? So, but this era of new founders, the millennial founders, will change the game for the next generation. And I'm so glad to see and participate in some of this. And some of the females that I'm working with, they're like, they're such kick-ass female leaders. And I'm learning a lot from them, and they're so much younger than me. And so there's a lot to really exchange. I have a few scars on my back, but my experience is very different. So I can't say, learn from me, but I'm learning from them actually. So it's a great experience.
Absolutely. Like I said, I love that you are mentoring. I think you're an inspiration to male or female, whatever gender. I think you are an inspiration to anyone who wants to start a business. Like I said, I think just your determination, your passion for what you do is undeniable. So anyone who's spoken with you, I'm sure, has felt the same way. And it's infectious. I think it goes back to, you're talking about building cultures. I know you started building your own kind of internal culture. If you can share more about kind of what has been the process in building your own purpose-led culture.
Yeah, we evolved so much. Actually, we just did an exercise, digital offsite rather than a remote offsite, right? And having that Zoom connection versus the face-to-face connection when you're doing these team building offsites are so different. But we were just talking about this. Our culture has shifted, and especially even now, like what are I mean, obviously your values don't change too much, but how we operate, how we execute, and
Mm,
how we, talk to each other with more empathy and compassion. It's even more, and recognize people for their efforts and their contribution, because if they don't get that human interaction, you need to do more of this, verbalizing some of the appreciation. So the culture is shifted big time, and we're now trying to redefine what that looks like and feel like, because we're operating remotely through a screen.
mm,
And so when we first started, we completely went this, B2C type of, culture. And then we went to enterprise. So, we got to be a little bit more sophisticated, but execute like a startup. And then
yeah.
another, now it's like, well, just be yourself. Just be yourself. And it's okay that your kid is running in the background, your dog's licking your face while you're having,
Yeah.
and so it's just be authentic, and just embrace it right now. No one should be judged, in those manner.
So no, I think that's a very good point of kind of, like I said, regardless of the audience, just having, certain values, which you talked about, empathy and things like that, authenticity. I guess the question is, as the team grows, how do you really assess, like, whether it's someone who's coming on board or someone who's been with the company for a while, how do you whether assess whether they're actually living those values out is always the big question I have.
Yeah, I think when you have a strong OKR culture, also,
Mm,
there's no room to think differently, because it's now based on your own created constitution.
mm,
You literally define those objectives, personal or business unit or company
mhm,
OKRs. So as long as it's, from the top down approach and bottoms up aligns really well,
mm,
we can all march in a much, faster velocity. I think when there's no alignment and there's no core objectives that everyone is going towards a certain purpose, it's really hard. So now I know my KPIs are this. My outcome is what I actually created, and how do I deviate from that? You,
mm,
you can't deviate from your own, your own defined measurement. So it's about accountability and ownership, for
mm.
most part. And then the rest of the culture and the core values come through to help you, achieve those results.
I think that makes perfect sense, and this is something I've always trying to do in building teams. I do it now with my current team, is trying to align their personal and professional objectives. So whenever I'm interviewing someone, I always try to figure out, what are you trying to, what are your hobbies, what do you enjoy doing outside of work, and try to
Yeah.
align that. Because a lot of the times where I made the mistake or where I've been put in wrong fits is misalignment in terms of what I actually enjoy doing versus the job scope. So I may take it because, look, I need money, or I need, I just need the job, and I may be able to convince the recruiter, or the HR manager, that I could do it. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, as time goes on, I'm going to be less involved, and less enthusiastic, because it doesn't really fit my own values or the way I kind of my way of working. So I think that's something that I've started tweaking way back when, is trying to, as you said, align kind of the personal and professional with the objectives as well. So it's all kind of cohesive, and knock on wood, no one's left me so far, but
Well, that's great. I mean, that says a lot about, your company culture and your leadership as well, because we want people to grow into their own, but also practice a lot of their strengths. Most of the weaknesses are coming from soft skills.
yeah,
It has, you can't do a spreadsheet better, or, you can
yeah.
only get a certain way of doing, the hard skills. But and as you practice more and more, great leaders are because they're so damn good with soft skills.
Mm. You are absolutely right. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of CEOs, billionaires, and things like that, and I think the soft skills is probably something they have over those who have more technical skills.
Mm.
And it does take. There's two different things. I think the soft skills, but I think also you talked about earlier in terms of empathy. So even in my team, I asked them, what do you think about culture? And they said, for us, it feels like a family. And I
Yeah.
think that's the type of environment that I wanted to create, where it's an open door. Like, you can be very transparent with me. If you don't like me or you don't like something I do, let me know. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm very protective of my kids and my team. Like, if anyone tries to attack them, I say, you come at me first.
No, it's true because it's become because we spend so much time with each other. I mean, 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours on Zoom a day, if not in person. And that kind of connection, it's family. You spend more of your time with your colleagues than sometimes your personal loved ones. And so it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm sure everyone's very excited about, working at Perks and working with you. I would be. So I'm sure it's the case with many of them. So Anna, I've really, really, appreciated catching up with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll have to do this once, we're able to do it in person soon. But
I look forward to that. I know we're not sure when that phase 3 or 4 comes in, right?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So time we'll have to do Zoom. But last question is, how can people get in touch or find out more about what you do?
I'm always accessible on LinkedIn and other social channels like Twitter. So they can also reach out with my email, anna@perxtech.com. I'm always embracing, thought leadership, exchanges, ideation with, the community. And those who have questions about my business also feel free to reach out.
Well, there you go. So if you're watching this, please feel free to reach out to Anna. She's an amazing leader. I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Just follow her on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Anna. Really, really appreciate you sharing your insights and your time today. And hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Great. Thank you, Joe. You take good care, and then I'll see you online or offline.
All right. Sounds good. See you soon. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.